we talked about north of Orlando.
Mm-hmm.
So off camera, I do have some family from that area
Mm-hmm.
of the world. Is that where you grew up as well?
That's where I grew up, and now we live sort of southwest of Orlando, closer to Tampa Bay,
Okay.
in a city called Lakeland.
Okay, yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
the Tigers.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah. See, I know my stuff. Yeah, I have some memories in Tampa. Some funny ones. Actually, I'll share one with you. The first time I ever ate at a Wendy's was at Tampa.
Really?
hmm
Interesting.
And so I love Wendy's now. But the story is, and my folks will always give me shit about this until the day I die. The story is I didn't know they had salt and pepper shakers. Because
Oh,
every fast food restaurant I've ever eaten at up till that point just had them in the little
little
packets.
packets, yeah.
Right? So I didn't know there was a salt and pepper shaker
Uh-huh.
on the table. So I'm just, putting salt on my fries
Yeah.
from the packet.
Yeah.
It wasn't salt. It was sugar. So I had the most sweetest French
Delicious.
fries I've ever had. And I'm just like, wow, these French fries taste like donuts. I don't understand. And so halfway through, my mom figured out that the packet was sugar and not salt. Have not lived that down, and it's 40 years later, sadly. Yeah, that's a Tampa memory. So, musical memories. What's the first thing you can remember musically?
The very first earliest thing I can remember is singing on the carpet when my dad was playing guitar. I also remember about the same. I must have been really, really, really small. Music was always present. My dad and my mom both play completely different. And then my granddad on my mother's side, that's the bluegrass family. And so I literally grew up crawling around in a pickin' circle, and those are my earliest memories are holding my tiny violin. I started playing violin at 3.
Wow.
And so it's like, this big.
Wow.
And they were a bunch of old, Florida by way of Southern Alabama fruit pickers. And they just would let me sit in and make noise with them. And then my dad was always, every night after work, he had his guitar and he was singing. And so those are like my earliest memories were singing most of all. My mom says I sang before I really talked. So it's been...
Was the violin your first love as far as instrumentation?
That was my first thing my parents signed me up for.
Okay.
I mean, I love it. I love it now, but they put me in lessons because my mom wanted me, she said she wanted me to have something to fall back on when I was old. Starting at 3 was important, I guess. And then...
That seems backwards to me.
I don't know. My family is very eccentric. They said... I started lessons at 3 and they said I could quit when I graduated high school. And my first teacher at 3 years old told me that I only had to practice on the days that I ate food. So it's very...
The days that end in Y, essentially.
Yeah.
So every single day.
Yeah, every single day. And I mean, the violin ended up paying for my college, so
the violin was the first instrument?
Yeah, but I mean, I sang the whole time, but the violin's the one that I was in like a rigorous academic program. And then, but music was everywhere, I was always playing something at my granddad's house. Him and his brothers, he had 9 brothers.
Wow.
I can't remember how many of them were still alive by the time there were at least 7 of them who were still sitting in the circle by the time I was old enough to remember playing songs with them. And then I had just always sang. I had always done it. So,
what are some things from that period in your life you've learned that you still kind of apply to today?
Just that practice is actually even more essential than a lot of musicians seem to think it is.
I agree. Muscle memory, right?
Yes, because if you practice enough, your muscle memory can take over enough for you to actually be in the moment when you're singing.
Absolutely.
And not be thinking about whether your hands are in the right place.
Especially that pinky when you're a fiddle player, right?
Yeah. Yes.
That's what stopped my father-in-law from being a fiddle player. He's complaining about it all the time. He's not with us anymore, but this is my wife's dad. He was a pedal steel player, played with Bob Wills.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
But I actually got to interview him, which was amazing. He had 72 years in the music business.
Wow.
When I interviewed him. And he said, man, all I wanted to do was be a fiddle player.
Mm.
He said, but my pinky had other ideas.
Fourth finger.
Yeah. He said, my pinky had other ideas.
They make you do pinky push-ups. Yeah. I'm not even joking. That's a real thing. Pinky push-ups.
Yeah.
Your bow hand. Anyway, I digress.
It aggravated him. And he was very, like, the kind of guy that never gets aggravated.
That's
right?
it.
But even at 88 some odd years old, he was still mad at his pinkies.
That's hilarious.
Yeah.
Yeah, they make you do all these, like, muscle separation techniques, like that kind of creepy stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Why am I doing? I've never done this in an interview before. They probably can't even see what I'm doing. But, separating the signals in your brain to your hand.
It's smart.
Yeah.
Because then you can just do it without thinking about it.
Yeah, and if you're forced to practice every day that you eat food, eventually you're going to get decent.
You just go a day without food sometimes, just so you can take a break.
I like eating, so sadly.
You know what, Dad? I'm not eating today. My hands are killing me.
My fingers are bleeding.
Yeah. Oh. That's great.
Yeah.
So you talked about bluegrass on one side of your family.
Yeah.
You obviously have that vibe in your music.
Yeah.
You hear it there, but there's so much more.
Yeah.
And the line on your webpage says genre-defying.
Yes.
And so what does that mean to you?
It means that I refuse to play by the rules of a framework.
Love it.
I'm not going to do it. So I'm going to pull from everything I've ever heard in my life and put it all together instead of trying to be there's nothing wrong with being a neo-traditionalist. I actually think those people serve a really important role.
I agree.
But it's just not me.
And I would say that the new record is a direct response from that freedom, right? Mm-hmm. Because who's going to put out a record that's devoted to one artist or one songwriter, essentially?
Right.
So if you don't have that freedom, that's not going to exist. That record would not exist without that.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah. Because a record label's not going to let you do that.
Mm-mm.
No way. No way.